it still.
Is this video too?
Yeah.
Just
That's
turning
all
into
right.
like Muppet with
All
AI.
right,
Yeah,
now I like that. Can we do like Mystery Science Theater 3000? Do you remember
That'd be
that?
great. That'd be
I
That was
great.
do.
one of my favorites. Okay, we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here with us on the Workshape's Field Notes, where we're going to talk about what's going on in the industry, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and just chatting about what we got on our minds and what's going on. Workshape has been hosting a number of sessions with folks across the workplace industry and beyond the industry. We like to learn from other unique perspectives outside of our work and our way of thinking to learn about what other people are doing and see what that can inform, how that can inform us. We've done 4 online sessions this year, or 3. We've got one more coming up this week, actually. All focused on workplace experience. We've done human needs, systems, places, and technology. We're going to do technology last. Today, we're going to continue the conversation on places. B and I had an awesome conversation just a few weeks ago, talking about places. And today we're excited to have Jade join us. And we're going to, the 3 of us, see what else we can come up with. We got a couple other topics to dig into. Again, to get in the weeds on and geek out a little bit on the idea of place and what it actually means and what it means to work, and see what we can come up with. So before I get started, how about both of you do a like 15-second intro on who you are, what you do, and then we'll, like I said, in the notes, we'll share your full profile so people can check you out and learn more about you.
I am B. Sanborn. I'm Principal and Design Research Leader at DLR Group, and I am a social scientist who's interested in making design better for people. I started out as an archaeologist, and I've worked in the design industry for over 10 years, and I'm just passionate about using curiosity and systematic inquiry to make designs better for people.
I'm Jade Franklin. I am the Vice President of Insights and Strategy for Teknion. We are a global furniture designer and manufacturer, and I also geek out over furniture. It's been 20 years of my life exploring the role that furniture and architecture makes in the work that we do and the lives that we live. And I'm looking forward to being part of this conversation and recapping B's last webinar session because it was so great, B.
We have a lot of stuff to cover and we don't have that much time because we're busy people and got place to be. So I'm going to start with one topic and then we can just go from there and see what we get to. I want to start with the idea of a desk and an office, and the desk, and I say this a lot, desk equals work to many people, or office equals work to many people. And I would love to think about how might we in a near term future think or talk or act differently such that being at a desk or in an office is not the only way you're seen as working in an organization, that there are other things that constitute work, and how we begin to turn that corner and open this definition up. Whoever wants to go first.
Jay, do you mind? I know what I'm thinking, Brett, when you ask that,
Go.
which is, I think that part of the interesting thing about being here now and the near-term future is that we all just got a strong dose of learning that desk and office don't always equal work and certainly aren't the only thing that equals work. And there are a lot of people who even prior to 2020 knew that they got most of their work done somewhere that wasn't called office and at a thing that wasn't called desk.
Mhm.
But whether you're talking about people suddenly working from home or working in transit or working remotely in general, or you're talking about lifting up the realization that what nurses do in a hospital room is work and getting work done, I think we all just got the master class in the many places that we work and how important getting that work done is. Not just to the job that we have to do, but also the feeling that work is supposed to produce in us, which ideally is a sense of satisfaction and mastery and confirmation that you got done what you were trying to do today. So I would say that it's organizations that are catching up to the question that you're asking
Mhm.
and how to provide those places for people. And we all also are just all learning a lot more and talking a lot more about the feeling of work as well as the place.
And we did learn over the last several years that work doesn't need to be a place. It's a thing. It's a value that you provide. I would argue that a lot of companies
Wha-
maybe forgot that too over the last couple of years as well, is whereas we're still hearing, at least in my world and my work, a lot of the tensions around, so wait, how many days are we coming in the office? And we try to talk to our clients a lot about when we start to hear, I think we're going to settle on a 3 days a week policy. We try to say, why? What will that get you? Everybody comes in 3 days a week. What will that solve? Or what will that create? Because it's our attempt of saying we fully believe that the workplace serves a purpose and it is a powerful tool within the ecosystem of work, but it is not the only tool. And going back to measuring by attendance instead of outcome and purpose is, I think, a dangerous place to be. And we always want to incorporate our clients or encourage our clients to say, think about the value that person does within the organization, the role that they do, the impact they make, and design around that less around here's a desk for them to go to 3, 4, 5 days out of the week.
Well, and I think what's really important and what you both just said and what I want to dig into more is that it seems like there's a very strong correlation between a desk, well, okay, desks making up most of the footprint of what office space traditionally has been. Desks being the place that is this one place or sense of ownership in most companies, because most companies now don't have actual offices for most people. So it's the thing that ties you or gives you some sort of identity in that, whether it's assigned or not, it's your place while you're there. And, but the idea that, well, if I'm standing at a whiteboard, or if I'm walking with you down the hallway talking, or if I'm in a break room and we're having a conversation about something that came up 2 weeks ago and we've just brought it back up again. All of those things are in fact part of work, but everybody, I feel like when they're there at an office, is rushing to get to a next scheduled meeting that they have, which is what people define. I have to leave this thing I'm doing in this place I'm in to go to something that's tied to my computer or tied to a room with a table where work happens. And and then you think about all the things that are tied into like the physical tools, the places themselves, and the technology and the postures and the behaviors, it's all very learned. That is when I'm working, and all this stuff in between is just something else. It's this filler. Imagine if the place that you went, in terms of if we're talking about physical place, if the place that you went did not have any desks, did not have any rooms with conference tables and screens, is it any less of a place of work than the place that has desks? And that's what I'm trying to, like, maybe I'm being overly optimistic or naive in some way, that I'm thinking that you could still be just as productive in that, or that could be just as good for you if you could satisfy positive, good posture, healthy posture, and ergonomics and all those other things. Could, or am I missing? Is it just that the desk is the best place to do the thing that is actually considered work, and I should just move on and stop harping on this?
I think it's both, right? The desk for many people serves an important part of belonging and attachment. And again, I think the talk track is this idea of ownership. I own this desk, I own this office, I own this space, to I feel like I belong when I walk in the front door. And I think the more you feel like you belong in a place, in a company, in an organization, the less the seat assignment tends to matter as much, because you feel safe wherever you go. But I also think that for many people, the desk is where their greatest work does happen by nature of what they do. And that comes into ergonomics and accessibility and all that. So the desk is really important. It can't always be a table in a work cafe where people go. So, but others, I joke all the time, I do most of my 9 to 5 stuff in front of the screen. But this screen is not the value that I give to my company. It's what happens after I go away from this screen. So what I need in a workplace is very different. I actually need the people, the socialization, the interactions, and the, oh, by the way, have you thought about this? Because that's where I get better. So I think it's both. There's a role for the desk and it's an important part of what we do, but equally important are those interstitial spaces that happen within a workplace that make ideas even better than if you were working aside.
Yeah, I'm one of yes and this, and I'm trying to decide where to start with it. I think, Jade, you referenced like, a big part of your role happens in a way that's not seen by sitting at a computer. And I think there's two, Brett, in your question, which I think is a good question. Am I barking up the wrong tree? I don't think you are, but I'll tell you why I think it might feel hard to people. One is, Jade, your example of like, what's the evidence of your work? So I'm a researcher. I often tell my students, I'm like, you think that like research is this article that you're going to publish in a journal, or it's this dissertation that you're going to publish. That is not. That is evidence that you did a thing. The problem with research and a lot of work that brings a lot of value through connection, through sharing of information, through generation of ideas is like, how do you tell that it happened? And we've decided largely in our work culture to make the evidence that work happened from like meeting minutes or a PowerPoint or an email. In research, we write a journal article to document what happened, and then we share it in like a way that we've all agreed on is evidence that the research happened and it was good. But the research was the doing of the project and the analyzing of the data and the thinking, a lot of thinking. It wasn't the writing of the article. That comes after. I think looking around at my colleagues who have different types of jobs than me, some of them have really clear deliverables for what they do, like I do. Like an architectural set of drawings is a thing that we know we made. But others, like business development, like how do you know you business developed today? What are the artifacts of that? And I think it going all the way back to the shift from management theory X to management theory Y, did we really do a very good job of that? And do we know, are we measuring, is Jade satisfied in her work? Does she feel like she accomplished all her goals today? And will we trust her evidence that she says, I worked? And that trust, we really peeled back the pudding cup lid and found out that we don't trust each other about work as much as we thought we did in 2020. Surprise. But the other part, Brett, when you say like, is the desk really the best? Well, right now, yeah, because for at least 70 years, we have been trying to make desks the best place to work. Ergonomically, we've made it the cockpit of all our technology. There are companies every day fine-tuning desk because we all agreed that was a thing that needed to be ergonomically better and have all these options. So like right now it might be, but if you put 70 years into developing something else, you probably could come up with at least 3 other things that did the job as well or better. If they fulfill all the use cases of desk, why not? And I would point to libraries as one example that there are totally different work environments with totally different rules where people feel really productive at certain kinds of work.
Yeah, no, agreed. So to me, the biggest nuance of this, and as far as it's funny how much of the physical place is defined from one moment, which has to do with being seated and originally writing, then being seated and typing on a typewriter, then typing on a keyboard on a computer, all comes down to this. It happens right here. And I can do it while I'm standing, and it's probably healthier if I do it while I'm standing, but it's most comfortable to do it. Okay, not all the time standing, but standing, it's probably it is more comfortable to do it while I'm seated. And it is on a horizontal surface it's held by. So up until I'm no longer typing and I'm only dictating, or it's on my glasses and I'm seeing it and my eyes are moving and I'm not even saying anything, or I don't like this one, but it's the thing right here plugged in the back of my brain and I'm thinking it and it's typing. Up until those things happen, we're still typing on something, which leads to this horizontal surface, which, to your point, the desk is the best version of that for an individual getting individual work done. But so, okay, I could go on about this the entire time. We've got a lot of other things to talk about. So thinking of then, you mentioned students, and not just students, but everybody when they go to work. Hopefully every day you're learning something new and you're trying to learn new things all the time, even if it's sometimes overwhelming. And even if sometimes you feel like you don't know what you wish you knew, that you're learning and you're trying to learn. Physical places, for me, have always played a big part in a couple of aspects of learning. One is reference. I reference based on location way better than if I'm sedentary and doing like studying and moving to multiple locations actually helps me learn more along the way than if I'm in one place the entire time. But also, like, there are other things that place has to do with learning, skill development, with us improving as individuals. I love to hear D, you start with, because I know you've studied a lot on this and thought a lot on this. How are there examples or specific things people can look at or think about that physical place can, things they can do in physical place that will actually help people be better learners and with skill development that maybe they're
Yeah.
not doing today?
Yeah, and you referenced my two favorite parts of this, not just one. I feel like, Brett, every time we talk, I'm like, you're actually talking about two or three things.
Yeah.
But you described two really different functions of the relationship between the brain and the physical body, which, by the way, they're the same. They're both in there, right? It's all one thing. We think of them as separate, but your brain is an organ in a body that's a system, and then learning and memory, and learning is a type of memory and information processing. So one is this idea of walking and thinking, and it also goes to some other things that we often see in workplaces, which is like ping pong or fun physical activities, basketball, moving around at work. And a lot of that is sitting is actually not usually great for our thinking. Number one, it takes a lot of impulse control to stay seated all day. It's actually not what your body typically wants to do. So there's a part of my brain, it's almost 4 o'clock where I am, and I've been sitting here since 7. Not my best day. But I have to keep myself here, right? So that's burning some of my energy. When I can get my body in motion, humans are built to walk. You can tell from our knee joints and our hip joints that we're built to walk steadily, slowly, a long time. You actually free up some of your higher order thinking by giving your automatic brain something to do. So whether that's playing guitar, cross-stitching, anything that you know how to do really well on autopilot physically will actually relax part of your brain and let some of your higher order thinking take over, which is why we tend to get great ideas when we're walking or noodling on the guitar or taking a shower or doing something that we do nearly every day on autopilot. And coming up with ideas, but most importantly, coming up with connections between existing ideas is a really key element of learning. We have to take new information and attach it to information we already have for it to be sticky. This other thing that you referenced of place and memory, you see really well expressed in the design of elementary schools, which is that we're using what we know of the brain and how we learn to make a space for learning. And that is through color, it's through shape, it's through getting kids up to different zones. Maybe it's in the room, maybe it's outside the room, and basically teaching little humans that this is where we go to do this, and that's where we go to do that. So it's time to change. And then for some reason, later in life, we just totally abandon that. Usually after high school or college, where we really attach learning to switching location a lot. And then one day we're like, now sit here and never change. And that having the rug yanked out from under one of the best learning devices we have, which is place-based memory, happens in this area of your brain called the hippocampus, which is a little seahorse-shaped guy, kind of is around your ears. And for people who do a lot of place-based learning, like cab drivers who don't use GPS, they have a lot of wrinkles and texture in their hippocampus, which means there's a lot of brain architecture there. But we learn to attach memory to place, both emotional and informational. So the best way to learn a colleague's name is that they sit in the same place every day. So when we're all moving around in the workplace, we're making it a lot harder to attach the purpose of a room to that room, the name of a person to the place that we always find them, or the quote unquote intuitive use of a space when it suddenly becomes every space for everything and everybody is everywhere. We've lost a huge part of our information architecture. So while I'm all in favor of moving, I do think we're being in general, broadly speaking, workplace a little unintentional in the way we use a lot of very multi-purpose spaces.
Well, in your comment about, I not ever made the connection of elementary school learning and changing of surroundings, and that and when you're at that age, you come up with amazing questions and you think of things that you think about. And then I immediately thought of this one instance of working with a utility company and doing a major restack in a tower. And we were interviewing engineers who had been in these workstations, one of them for 28 years in the same cubicle. And there were 8-foot high panels. And we walked in and I almost couldn't find the desk because it was like a hoarder's paradise. But this person, by all accounts, from everybody I talked to, was the least likely to go along with any new idea or to come up with a new idea, knew their systems and processes, and that's what they did. And they did it exceedingly well, but they were never going to they were never going to paint outside of the lines that had been painted. And I never thought about this idea of this balance between place and identity and connection because of that. You having a part in the mosaic of this place versus place becoming a constraining element in your life, and being that it is too fixed and doesn't allow you to expand your mind and think and learn. So there's definitely balance in all this.
Can I tack on a mini thing though?
Yeah.
Just in solidarity with the guy in the cubicle, like maybe that makes him amazing at his job. Maybe that's what he needs to do and we don't want to disrupt it. And also I bet he could tell you where everything on that desk was, right? Like that's his information architecture. So just, it happens at many scales.
Right.
So I have a lot of thoughts, more than the 14 minutes will allow that we have left, but completely agree that the best learning, and I think memories happen when you can attach it to a place or a space, or for that matter, an outfit or a smell or anything, right? Whenever I can associate a moment in time with other senses, it's going to stick. So I think it reinforces the role of these learning environments, whether that learning is for adults in training in the corporate workplace or learning from a student environment, whether it's K through 12 or higher ed. But two things that I want to point out. One, we're just embarking on some higher education research. So we've been talking to a lot of students. We've been talking to a lot of faculty members. And obviously, we're ripe for change in the classroom environment, right? But two things that came to my mind when B was talking is, one, this idea of fixed variability. So finding that from a classroom environment, while we think the world wants agile and this idea that you can make this space whatever you want, there's actually some science to support having some static elements in the space that serve as anchors are actually really reassuring and grounding for a lot of people. And so when we think about that from a higher education standpoint and what a classroom might look like, when you start to look at that through the lens of corporate workplace, where we had gone so far to say, look at this agile environment. You can make it whatever you want. You can move everything, you can change everything, and it just often looks like chaos. And what would happen is people would go in and there was no attachment to anything because every day you walked in and it looked a little bit different. And people would die for an 8-foot tall panel cubicle. And I think what we're learning now, and B had said this before, is the word intention. Is we're learning how to create these spaces, whether it's to learn, to grow, to mentor, to coach, to do, to meet, these intentional spaces that have this element of an anchor, so you can associate the moment with a space, but also just enough variability so that I can make it my own in a way that works best for what I'm doing and who I am and the needs that I have.
So so many things now. Okay. Gonna play like all sides of the coin here and throw this back at you both. If you think about place and the walking into something you're comfortable with and that has order, you talked about order, Jade, and I hear you and I agree. In absence of order is chaos. And if you're in an environment where every time you walk in, it looks completely different, one, to a lot of people that may be unsettling. Two, it may be hard to orient or connect. And But I think on the other end of the spectrum is our industry, as with a lot of designers and architects, are trained in a way that involves lots of straight lines and boxes. And it involves that because it's the most efficient way to create space. If I said, what if, so think about a place in nature that you love going that has a familiarity to it and is the same, and you love going back to it because it is the same place every time you go back to it, and and maybe it changed because time of day, time of year, it's always different, but it's the same. If you can bring that sort of order and sameness to a physical place, but not the kind of what comes out of boxes in my mind, what I'm getting to this place in my career, and I've drawn lots of more boxes than I can count, and more boxes that people sit in that I can count, is most of these boxes are as an individual place and container that is without really, in most cases, prospect and refuge. It's without any unique, other than whatever I bring to it to give it life. It is still not unique. It's still just like the thing next to me, which is just like the thing next to me, which really does not happen in nature, but we've created it. And so we are all in a place, part of a system, and we're just trying to fit into this thing and also stand out. And I have seen a few environments and physical places that have been created that have started to break down these kind of, I would say, learned habits that we've created that have like, this is how you do this because this is the most efficient way. I guess what I'm after is, we think that there is a reason to explore value in creating places that do these things that you're talking about, have a sense of place, have a sense of order, have a sense of familiarity, give you a sense of home and being someplace that you're a part of, but also bring all the uniqueness and the kind of variety and diversity that comes in a natural place that most physical work environments have done a very poor job of delivering on. It doesn't matter. Do we think is it really just like, you know what? Because whether something is curved or straight or regular, I guess where I'm thinking is, well, if you have 100 desks, could you not have 100 different shapes for those desks? And could they not be, I'm being very impractical. Go along with me here. I'm like, but if you had this and they were all created and you had your place that was actually really fit to you, and it was the shape that made sense to you and the orientation that made sense to you versus another, is very different. If you go out and find a place, if we all went out into nature and we had to find a place to live for a day, we picked the spot, the three places we pick would probably be three very different places, but we don't have that choice in an environment. And it may be my brain thinking, oh, I want to be sheltered from the wind. And you're thinking, I want to have a view. And you're thinking, I want to be near the water.
Can I jump in? Because I feel like you're speaking to my former career here in archaeology.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not, I'm going to give you one of my frustrating me answers, Brett, at this point that I'm always going to be like, I could pen. But I think for me, it's more about balance of what is familiar and what is novel. And really like the way that we feel familiar with something, it's repeated experiences with it. And so I really like this metaphor you're using because to me, the ultimate building is one that's like arriving at a mountain that you've hiked on many times, right? Like you're like, I know where the trail is. I'm ready to go. I've got all the right stuff. I know how long it's going to take me, but I'm going to see different flowers and the weather will be different. And maybe I start at a different time of day. So there's a real balance of knowing the trail, knowing the terrain, feeling prepared and equipped to do it, to where you're ready to take that adventure with confidence. But then there's enough that's changing that it made you want to go back to a place you've been before. And I think that there's a lot of ways to achieve that if we keep these certain core needs in mind. And one of those needs is familiarity. And I don't think there's a way to produce a sense of familiarity without people being familiar with it. And making a building that looks like building is one way to do that, but there are other ways to do that. And then similarly, novelty. Like we want a little pleasant novelty, but not so much that we spend all our brain power that day trying to figure out what's going on. So I think it's striking that balance with intention. And yeah, I feel like, again, the library is a good example because you know enough about library to walk into any library and feel familiar with the system, but not the space. Whereas you could go to a museum that you've been to a lot before, you know the building, but what changes is the exhibits. But I think it's about doing it judiciously and in balance and keeping those core needs in mind. And I argue that we would actually pick maybe different places to live in the wild if we had to do it, but they'd have some similar features like shelter and water. Because those, like, whatever it is, it's got to meet certain needs for us. And I think the same is true of a building design, a space design.
So one other thing to dig into that I wanted, and Jade asked about this from the last session, and I don't remember everything we talked about because we talked about a lot of stuff, but maybe Jade, you could even ask the question, but was curious about, we talked about comfort in the workplace and the definition of comfort. I mean, I could do the same thing I did with this other stuff with comfort. I can turn that all the way around, but curious what you were looking to talk more about, Jade.
Yeah, well, when we talked about it, it was through the lens of the definition of comfort, which is there's one of the physical definition, right? Is it soft? Does it offer ergonomic support? There's all that. But there is a bigger definition around, do I feel comfortable in this space? And what I mean by that, and what I wanted to dig into with B, is in the world that we do, we design these spaces and they can be as ordered or as chaotic as possible. They can have the best furniture, the best amenities, offer the best hospitality. But if an individual walks into that front door and says, I don't fit in here, I don't belong here, the best chair, the best technology, the best espresso will not create a great experience. And so I'd love to just talk a little bit more, B, and get your perspective on balancing and prioritizing the design around quote unquote comfortable spaces, support, and a variety of postures to give people choice and accommodate for diverse needs, but also encouraging the broader definition of, do I feel comfortable in this room with these people, and how space and place can support achieving that level of comfort.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head for me. I mean, I'll just put it out there that, like, as a queer person, I arrive in a lot of buildings and I know I'm never going to be 100% comfortable there. Not because most buildings are heteronormatively designed. They're designed based on a binary, and I'm not just talking about bathrooms. I'm talking about things that, like, queer people can see everywhere we go, from signage to color choices to even symmetrical binary layouts. And that's fine. I'm used to that. I've got my eyeballs on. And there's entire user groups out there that have the same experience when they walk into a building. There's going to be a couple things that they clock right away to say, and this goes back to Brett's campsite imagination session, which is, there's a couple things that I'm going to look for and say, cool, how many of my needs can I get met here? And we're going to find them pretty quickly. Somebody who uses a wheelchair is going to notice them pretty quickly for their own set of needs. A person in the LGBTQIA plus community, believe me, it's pretty darn fast usually. People who maybe have a different dietary or religious preference, who are lactating or going through some other life change event. Spending a day in a building, they're going to say, can I get my needs met here? And I think that's the threshold to comfort. Is this a building that will meet my needs graciously and generously, or am I going to have to work for it? Is the doorway to comfort. This is step one. A lot of people, and I'm guessing actually everyone on this call, doesn't entirely feel that way in a lot of buildings they go to. And then from there, you go down to the room level, but really I think it stems through the organization. Space as a way of communicating values. I've invested money in having this thing here for you, Jade. And that does send a message to people. So I think first, can we get through the doorway of everybody getting their basic needs met generously by the building, not tooth and nail, but like generously offered to them by the building. And then from there, are you able to build up that comfort socially because the building is communicating other values to you, for you, but also how we're supposed to interact with each other. This is what kind of place this is. But that's, I think, what I would say there.
I
And
have
yeah,
so many questions.
inclusive, welcoming design, but more than that, generous design.
I have so many more questions now that we don't have time to. This is that's a topic I've not really gotten into much, but I will say I'll leave you both with one thing that I did, and I don't know if this is a way, and maybe there's other. What I'm getting at is maybe there's other versions of this that could be out there that we could be doing as exercises to help people gain better empathy and perspective. When in undergrad in architecture school, we had to spend an entire day with some physical disability that we were given. We either couldn't walk, we couldn't see, we couldn't hear, or some people got like all three of them. And you then had a partner, and they were there to help you. They weren't only supposed to help you if you were in danger. You had to make your way around the entire campus and fulfill a set of things you had to do with that physical disability. And you quickly realized just how poorly designed the whole world is for anybody that has that either has a difference or a disability or anything that's like, well, you did not take these other needs or experiences or perspectives into consideration when you design this. And I just think most people were upset that we had to do it because they thought it was annoying and they were just mad. Like, I couldn't believe the things they had to do to open the doors. I'm like, yeah, it's a huge wake up call. Look at what we're doing. We're creating these things. Oh, those stairs are gorgeous. I can't wait. Like, well, how does somebody else get up there? If you have to, there's these big stairs where, oh, there's a ramp. It's all the way back there. I'm not going to bother. Or they can, I mean, the things that people would say that were so dismissive because it was designing for beauty, designing for a perfect, like what seems to be this solution that is without any flaws. And like, no, you should be designing for an amazing experience for people of all different types, shapes, sizes, perspectives, backgrounds, personalities. And I think, though, this is all tied into the idea that a workplace, and where I started with the whole thing, is not a one size fits all, creating these boxes of similarity out of convenience and efficiency and effectiveness is part of my problem with where we're at with all of it. And that if we start to create and design for more variety, greater number of experiences, and fold in what you both brought up a lot here, which is the idea of some sense of familiarity and connection to place and relationship of you and your full self to that place. I think that's that's like the bar we're aiming for, is this like weaving all of these things together, which is hard to do. And otherwise, I think a lot of people will be doing it. This is easier to say than it is to do. But anyway, I don't know if either of you has anything you wanted to leave with before we go.
We talk a lot about the fact that empathy is not just trying to put yourself in that person's shoes. Because I'm not a biological mom. So there are things about motherhood that I will never understand. No matter how many times someone talks to me about it, I can't comprehend it because I've never been through it. But if that mother comes to me and says, well, this is what it feels like. This is what feels like going to a lactation room. This is what it feels like being late to a call because my kids wouldn't get in the car. This is what it feels like. Then what I can do is I can tap into that feeling, because I know what it feels like to be stressed. I know what it feels like to be uncomfortable. I know what it feels like to feel like I'm not doing enough for anybody. And that's just one example. But I think in the world of design, if we can get better collectively at trying to tap into the feeling and designing around that feeling instead of designing around an event that we may never understand, I think we'll find that we're exploring new opportunities and getting just a little bit better around how we create and design spaces.
I very much agree, Jade. I'm a psychologist, and there are a lot of studies on the limits of empathy taking and the limitations or even sometimes damage caused by trying to solve everything by empathizing with each other. I guess the thought that I would leave with, and I feel like this is a big ask because I realize I'm talking about the world of work, and at the end of the day, work is a transactional system. I'm not going to pretend it's not. We're all trading things with each other, and we've all defined what those parts and pieces are that we're trading, from like pay to deliverables to hours. We've got a lot of little transactions baked into our work life. But I think And especially in some of the things we were just talking about, like this temptation to gloss over somebody not feeling welcome with an espresso machine is very transactional. So I would just encourage people who are designing or making or trying to find any part in this discussion to take a more relational stance, which is where are we trying to go together and how will we know when we get there? Because that helps us focus on the relationships first, and feeling welcome is part of a relationship rather than trying to jump to the solution and say, like, my job here today is to provide a solution for workplace wellness. So what's it going to be? And we have 1 week to figure it out. That's really hard. And there's no way to short circuit having a trusting, welcoming relationship or having a trusting working dynamic where people are going to give you the information to get to that workplace wellness, whatever. So I think the more that we can focus on like relational contracts in our work and relational agreements rather than transactional in our industry, I think that's what's going to get us really far toward the end that we want to get to.
Well said.
Well, thank you to both of you, because I'm thought of some things or was reminded of things and have some new perspectives on things that I, in the last 45 minutes, that I would not have had if I didn't get to spend this time with you both. So thank you both for being here and for making the time. I really appreciate it. And we will look forward to seeing you in the future at one of our next events. And thank you very much.